Thank you for joining us. You are a part of an elite group who recognizes that Black women's health should be at the forefront of the national conversation. We are mothers, daughters, activists, entrepreneurs, entertainers, corporate warriors, and more, who help boost the economy and often drive the national conversation. For 38 years, the Black Women's Health Imperative has strived to amplify our voices, help enact policy that protects us, research our issues, create programs that enhance our lives, and produce events like this one to ensure we keep the conversation going about the issues that matter to us most. So, let's get started with our program.
Good evening. I'm Linda Goler-Blount, President and CEO of the Black Women's Health Imperative. Thank you for joining us for the second of our Cultural Conversation series. Tonight, we're going to focus on mental and emotional wellness for Black women and girls. We are all undergoing stress and anxiety during this pandemic, and it's presented us with many unknowns, including what our new normal will look like and when we'll get there. 2020, as they say, has been a year, overwhelming us with unimaginable loss, especially in communities of color. The social unrest resulting from horrific murders of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and too many others, coupled with the nation's abysmal public health response to COVID-19, has created the most imperfect of storms: grief, stress, and economic hardship for our nation's Black women and girls. Now more than ever, it's critical that we make emotional wellness and self-care a priority. That's why the Black Women's Health Imperative is putting a spotlight on emotional wellness through our Black and Well campaign for Giving Tuesday, which takes place December 1st. Through this campaign, we will empower 500 Black women and girls with a gift of emotional wellness kits. The kits will go to our community ambassadors, like our lifestyle coaches, college women who participate in our My Sister's Keeper program on HBCU campuses, young ladies in high school in our Sis Circles programs, and we will partner with a number of our policy partners, such as the strong partnership we have with Women Investing in Leadership Development, whom you'll hear from later. The campaign will also highlight the importance of raising awareness and funds for this critically important health issue in our community that's too often overlooked and, as we know, is deeply stigmatized. Be on the lookout for more information on this campaign, which will kick off later this month. Emotional wellness is not just important for our psychological health, but our physical health as well. Black women have on average 15% more cortisol in their bloodstreams at any point in time than white women. And research shows that it leads us to age faster, a phenomenon called weathering. It triggers our inflammatory response and our metabolic response, which raises our risk for diabetes, hypertension, and obesity. These in turn raise our rates for COVID-19 infections and death. And on top of all of this is the economic impact. Black women are the heads of households in roughly 30% of homes, as compared to 9% of white women-led homes. The latest Pew research suggests that Black unemployment rate may reach 30%. If that happens, then we're looking at poverty rates of 35 to 40%. When we add deaths of despair that occur due to poverty, and assuming that there's no widespread vaccine available, by sometime in 2023, every Black woman could lose a first-degree relative to COVID-19 or its fallout. We have a truly dynamic panel of guests tonight who will speak to the lived experiences of Black women. I'd like to thank our sponsor, Thrive Cosmetics, for supporting this most important conversation. The Black Women's Health Imperative was founded 38 years ago as a self-care organization. Well, we Black women need to practice self-care now more than ever. To start us off, I can think of no better person to set the stage for tonight's discussion. Congresswoman Bonnie Watson-Coleman is serving her third term representing New Jersey's 12th Congressional District, a powerhouse and advocate for Black women's health and rights. In 2016, Congresswoman Watson-Coleman helped found the Caucus on Black Women and Girls. She's a member of the Congressional Black Caucus, as well as an active member of the Progressive Caucus, the Caucus for Women's Issues, and LGBT Equality Caucus, among many, many others. She has been a tireless friend and supporter of BWHI, and I couldn't be more proud to introduce her this evening. Congresswoman Watson-Coleman, the screen is yours. And if we can get the Congresswoman's sound up, that would be great.
Can you hear me?
Yes. Thank you.
Oh, I did the opposite. I was already unmuted. I'm sorry. Thank you for having me. You're getting ready to embark on a really very serious conversation with women and their lived experiences. You know, as a brand new member of Congress, I was confronted with the discussion and the concern that our issues of the intersection of race and gender just don't seem to capture the attention of those who are putting together legislative pieces, policy pieces, or are developing an agenda of what we're going to apply resources to. And so out of that moment came the Congressional Caucus on Black Women and Girls that I co-founded with Robin Kelly of Illinois and Yvette Clark of New York, two really dynamite sisters who work in this space every single solitary day as well. And we have attempted to shed light upon issues that affect us as women and as girls that have been overlooked. I mean, from missing girls to disparities in healthcare, to emotional issues, just job opportunity issues, social justice issues, criminal justice issues, on and on and on and on and on. We certainly don't have, we have more issues than we have time. And then last year, I was looking at my Facebook and I was noticing that this whole issue of Black youth suicide kept coming up as a daily occurrence. Someone tried it, someone succeeded, 5 years old, 9 years old, 8 years old. I'm like, hold up, there's an issue here. No one is paying enough attention to this issue. Now, we may not be able to fix things as quickly as we like, but at least we can shed some light on them. So Karen Bass, who is the chairperson of the Black Caucus, and I got together and we agreed that I would lead an emergency task force on Black youth suicide and among youth in particular. And as we were doing that, the whole issue of what young Black girls getting pushed out in school, over disciplined for things like their hairstyle, for doing things that their white cohorts were doing, which were looked at very differently. All of that started bubbling up as well. And what we found out was that in many instances, things that were being reacted to, perceived as perhaps behavior problems and all, might not have been that at all. May have been emotional reactions to lives that they were living, experiences that they were having, but no one was necessarily trained in these things. And we as African Americans were reluctant to seek help from a psychologist or a social worker to look at some of our emotional issues. And then if we were interested in doing so, we would find out that there just weren't enough of them that were culturally competent to address our issues, to really understand the nuance of our experience and to help us navigate those things. Out of this, the emergency task force came a report sounding the alarm. And it demonstrated that we don't have enough research. We don't have enough minorities working in the fields. We don't have enough support going to the young people who would even embark upon being educated in these areas. And there's not enough happening at the research institutes to support the kind of issues raised by researchers that look like us. And so this legislation that I sponsored got just passed the House and has some very strong support in the Senate, would place resources into those areas that we found these tremendous gaps, whether it's in the research areas, whether or not it's in the social services areas, the medical provider areas, whether it's in schools trying to bring some sort of understanding to the signs that you may be seeing in our children and not recognizing them for what they are. Then you put this pandemic on top of everything else, and it has just it has attacked our security in our jobs, our homes, our ability to be mothers, our ability to be caregivers. We operate always under a lot of stress, and we need to address that stress, and we need to be able to seek the kind of professionalism that will help us to navigate it. And so these conversations that you're going to have today, some conversations I've been having with others who are providers and advocates, I believe will do a couple of things. Number one, shed light on the fact that we need more in this space. Number two, shed light on the fact that there's no stigma attached to needing some response to our emotional or mental issues that we might have. If your leg is broken, you go see a doctor to fix it. And the same thing is if you're emotional or if you're feeling things or experiencing things that are that need attention. But advocating right now, Black women for Black women, is so vitally important. And making sure that those who are going to hold leadership positions in this country and our respective states respect the fact that they've depended so much upon Black women to get them there. We have been dependable and reliable under the worst circumstances, and now is our time. And so we'll continue to have these kinds of conversations. We'll continue to raise issues on the Hill. We'll continue to work with introducing legislation and policy initiatives that look to those areas that have been overlooked for so long. And because we are who we are, and because we're going to make sure that people recognize how we were instrumental in creating opportunity for them to be where they are, we're going to have a different outcome. It's going to be a new day. And so this is the dawning of that new day. I thank you for all the work that the Imperative has been doing for so many years. Now I think we need to seize upon this moment that has become a movement and push the envelope as far as we can. So thank you for inviting me. I appreciate this opportunity, and God bless you and God bless your work.
Well, thank you so much, Congresswoman. We appreciate your work. Your partnership has meant so much to us, and we are with you in this fight. To your point, we're going to have young girls blamed for something that is not their fault simply because they're trying to deal with the stress. And we will see this play out among women across this country. So we need this legislation, and we are in it with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And now I'd like to introduce our moderator, Monica Barnes, executive producer of the Steve Harvey Morning Show, which broadcasts in 103 radio markets and is streamed live on iHeartRadio. A native of Jackson, Mississippi, she has proudly taken on the nickname Mississippi Monica. You might say, okay, she's a producer, she's in the media, she knows how to moderate a conversation. You'd be right, but what you may not know is Monica is perfectly suited for tonight's discussion because for over 10 years, she worked as a mental health provider and a vocational rehabilitation specialist. So Monica, you could have done anything, but you've chosen to use your voice and your platform on behalf of Black women's emotional wellness. And we just couldn't be more grateful. So thank you so much for what you've done and for what you're about to do. Screen's all yours.
Thank you, Linda. I want to come on tonight. Thank you for having me. And like Linda said, my background is mental health, so I'm very passionate about it. It's impacted my family, my friends. So to be an advocate still and to speak on it and work with you guys tonight is an honor. But we have a very special guest that I must bring on to you now. She is a Grammy Award-winning iconic gospel artist, and she is also a radio host, a mommy, a first lady. She's got so many things under her umbrella, under her hat. She wears so many hats. I'm just surprised she had time for us tonight. Please welcome Ms. Erica Campbell.
Hello there.
Hey, Erica. So let's get started. Like I said, you wear so many hats. You're a Grammy Award-winning gospel superstar, radio host, a first lady, but most importantly, you're a wife, a mom, a sister, a friend, a daughter. How do you balance it all? It's a lot going on in these troubling times. How do you balance it all?
Well, I always say I wear a lot of hats, but I don't have to wear them all at the same time. I would look like a crazy person trying to hold a microphone and a bottle and a radio mic at the same time. So luckily, we can do things, you know what I mean, in their designated spaces. And, you know, life is messy, so sometimes things spill over. But having great people around me, being grounded in my faith, understanding that God is in control and believing that with my whole heart allows me to kind of settle myself. This pandemic has been very interesting. This is the longest I've ever not been on a plane. I've been performing via Zoom, but this is the longest I've ever not been in front of an audience. And when your life shifts that way, you have to take a moment to kind of reassess. Did the audience need me or did I need the audience? And so there's a lot going on. You know, we're in the house together, homeschool. What in the world?
Teacher.
Right. What is that? So you just take moment by moment, a whole lot of faith, a whole lot of prayer, a whole lot of love from my village, my circle, my sisters, has allowed me to be okay. The pandemic has not been horrible to my family. Prayerfully, have not lost anyone, and we're all relatively sane. So that's
Has it brought you guys closer, being in the house, or are you at each other's throats? Like, what's the dynamic in your home?
I like my husband a lot, so we're
That's good. That's good.
Yeah, a lot of conversations, creating music, creating moments with my children. I had never done a video for my song, A Little More Jesus. So I literally did one at home on our camera phones with my children, which was a lot of fun. Being able to tap in to see, you know, how they're doing, you know, when they're away at school, you can't gauge their temperament. You just know they're at school, but, you know, paying attention to their emotions, what they're thinking, you know, are they fulfilled? They're children, but they have desires and dreams. So it's made me pay attention in a different way. And also not having to go to the church is very, very different. Everything is different. This is our new normal. And
yes.
So I thought it would be done by September. I was like, oh, we'll be back in church, or we'll be doing concerts again, or I'll be back in my studio.
No time. Not till next year.
Not till next year.
Next year. So what's your approach to mental health? Has it impacted your family in any way? How do you talk to your children about it? Have you had to deal with issues, depression during the pandemic, or just anyone in your family who may be imbalanced during this time or has suffered an imbalance in the past?
I think for me, I realized that nothing was wrong, but something wasn't right. And I ended up calling a therapist, and I've been meeting with her for probably the last month or two, literally learning things about myself that I never paid attention to. I knew my temperament and my spirit was different in my house. And I just kind of chalked it up to, you know, the pandemic. You're not singing, you're not in, but sometimes it's deeper than that. Sometimes it taps into things that we've been suppressing because, you know, as Black women, we are trained to suppress, flow and go. You know, we just got to keep going. We don't have time to deal with broken hearts or disappointments or problems with, you know, I've lost some friends. I lost my favorite uncle who was also my pastor. So it was a lot going on that I really didn't have time to deal with like I usually do, but I'm still on the radio encouraging everybody. I'm still pouring out every day, you know, and I'm like, I'm empty, y'all. I'm empty. And there was no way. Oh, of course, we post on social media and you go, hey, pray for me. But sometimes you literally need to deal with yourself. Check your heart, check your thoughts. Are my thoughts a little too far? You know, and most churches, honey, just pray. I want to pray and talk with someone. I think prayer is great, but it is an additional tool. It's not the only tool. And so even as a first lady, I tell that to my members. I got 7 sisters and a big circle of girlfriends. And I truly believe that when we check on each other and we hold each other accountable and we challenge each other, as opposed to saying, oh, she's just going through. Sometimes it's deeper than that. Sometimes there's literally issues going on in your body. I mean, it's small stuff like my nose was stopped up in the morning. I was like, oh, I'll be fine. Oh, I'll be fine. I was like, let me go to the doctor. I find out I have a sinus infection, which could affect my singing, it could affect other things. So when you ignore what your body is trying to tell you, you cheat yourself. You do a disservice. You're not your best self. You're not the most healthy you can be. And it is almost sinful to pray and say, Lord, fix it, but don't do anything about it. Don't call a doctor. Don't sit with someone. It's almost sinful to say, Lord, help me be healthy, and you eating pork chops and chips and soda.
Right.
You don't want to be healthy. You don't, if you're not meditating, if you're not taking moments to just breathe and just be.
Just be.
I'm grateful that I have a husband who's so, on board with Team Healthy Erica. He'll say, I got the kids, go ahead, go for a drive, hang out with your girlfriends, and I'm grateful that I've got a good circle to help me get to the healthiest place that I need to be.
Well, that's really good, because you do pour out so much of yourself on the air, in your music, and you need to take time. And this is a great stopping point for a celebrity such as yourself to just take a minute, step back. And I see memes, or if you don't come out of this successful in doing this and doing that, or started through it, you do at your own pace. People put pressure on you to perform and excel, and everyone should be working at their own pace right now.
Yeah,
they want to wear sweatpants for 3 days and not shower. That may be where they are right now. We just have to meet people where they are and stop putting our expectations and pressures on others, I believe.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
Social media
just continue to pour into everybody, Erica. You just continue to do your part.
Absolutely. Social media makes us compare. We
really
don't. But you can't help it when you see something. You can see billboards about burgers. You wouldn't think about no burger, but you see a billboard about a burger, you go, stop by Fat Burger real quick. You know what I mean?
You one, just a little one.
But it's the same way with other people's lives and the things they had and the way their house looks and the way their pictures looking. Ooh, they're already getting ready for their holiday pictures. I mean, you just feel this anxiety to keep up. Sometimes you got to put it down. If you're not strong enough to say, that's their life, I'm just looking and I'm fine. If it shifts the way you feel about you, put it down. Take a moment, look yourself in the mirror, talk to yourself. No, that's not crazy to talk to yourself. Sometimes I do.
Talk to yourself.
It's too much, put it down, take a break, recharge, refresh. We need to do that sometimes.
So when you come out of the pandemic, what will you do differently as far as performing and traveling and just integrating yourself back into in front of your fans and just getting back into your normal routine?
I don't know. I've not even thought about what I'll do differently. I can't wait. What I have been doing is fortifying my immune system and making sure that I'm as healthy as possible, so I don't have that little angst, that little what if fear, and then my faith is big, so I feel like even if I did get something, I'd be healed in a moment, because that's how my God works. And my faith is just that way. That's been my experience my whole life. No matter what, in the hospital, whatever, I believe God is a healer. But in addition to that, so I take good care of myself. But I'm ready. I'm ready for my fans. I'm ready for an audience. I'm ready to hear people clapping their hands and not just tapping
the like button and the hearts flowing up on the live.
Right.
Yeah, I do understand that, because I haven't traveled since March, and I'm like, let me go somewhere, please. Please. I just want to go somewhere. Just go somewhere. So
I have a sister, we call her Google. My sister done been
I follow Google on the gram. Google is out in this world.
If living your best life during COVID is a person, it's Google Atkins. You hear me?
Yes, Google is traveling safely, but she is getting where she wants to go. She said, I will not, Corona, you will not sit me down. I love it. I love her spirit. She's always fly, and she's dressing other people. So she is living her best life. Yes. And that's what we all need to do, and like you said, if you believe in God and trust, you can integrate yourself back out there and just do it the right way. Do it safely.
Yeah, do it safely.
Yeah. So we'll just wear our mask and carry on.
Absolutely. Just get a cute pink mask and live your life.
Rhinestones on it and be a diva. We'll see wherever Google gets hers. We'll call Google. Okay, so I think it's time to move on. I'm not real sure with the virtual setup. So we are going to introduce a couple of more speakers tonight. I may be too fast. Let me see. Stretch, Erica. You know how to stretch. Start singing us something. Sing us out there.
Yeah, you learned that in church.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we are going to bring on Shauna Wadley and Dr. Kimberly Alexander. Hello, welcome, ladies.
Hello.
So Shauna is the co-founder of Women Investing in Leadership Development, which is WILD, that's the acronym, and she's the lobbyist for Holland and Knight and the first lady of Kingdom Fellowship AME Church in Silver Spring, Maryland. And then Dr. Kimberly Alexander is the co-founder of Women Investing in Leadership Development, WILD, and the first lady of the Park Church in Charlotte, North Carolina. So we have 3 first ladies. And me. Welcome, ladies. So as a senior pastor's wife, what has been your experience with mental health issues in the church, and what are some ways your church has addressed or is addressing mental health issues right now? I know we're not back in the church yet, or you may be. So Shauna, if you want to go first and address this.
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you for having me, and I'm so excited to be here, and so good to be here with my business partner, Dr. Kim, and so good to see my good friend, Lady Erica. Thanks for joining us. We reached out to her a while ago about this, and she said yes immediately. So I'm just thankful she's faithful. Well, it's interesting. Speaking of some of the things that we've done, we try to provide interesting and educational programming for our members. So to make sure that they're well educated and have the tools and resources that they need to address, their mental health or emotional wellness issues. So for instance, back in February, actually Lady Erica came, her and her husband, to talk about marriage, but we also had her sign her book, which is called More Than Pretty, which addresses issues for young women. And so we try to be creative to get, reach certain demographics. I have a ministry called Keeping Your Poise. I'm very interested in working with women between the ages of 21 and 35, which is a very challenging season in life for women. And so what we do is we provide opportunities to bring in speakers like Dr. Kim and others to really address their issues, talk to them, make sure that they're being honest with where they are, and if they need assistance, then we'll ask them to get that assistance. My husband is very, very committed to making sure not only that they're growing spiritually, but if there is a concern, then they need to see a clinician. It's not just, as Lady Erica said, it's not just about praying the issue away. It's about seeking, assistance and support from those who are qualified and trained to address these issues.
Absolutely.
Dr. Kim?
Sure. I want to say thank you as well for having us. It's a pleasure to be able to share, especially with First Ladies, as we are always in the fishbowl, which I think adds more stress.
Yes.
One of the reasons we created WILD is to give pastors' wives and ministers' wives a place to be able to share. At our church, one of the things that I think that's a little different that we've done is my husband did a preaching series addressing suicide when there was a series called 13 Reasons Why. He did 13 Reasons Why You Should Live. And so he, for 13 weeks in a row, addressed suicide and talked about it openly and did altar calls and made it so that some of the youth were open to talking about it because some of them had lost friends to suicide. So that I think is key, just taking the stigma away from these conversations like we're doing today, to be able to have a conversation about mental health, about emotional health and wellness. We also have a counseling ministry, and the support groups, I think, provide a lot of help to people because very often people feel like they're the only person. I feel like I'm the only person that's dealing with something. But once you're around other people in a group and you're able to talk, it makes it a little bit easier to share what you're going through. Whether it's the domestic violence support group, the cancer care support group, our caregiver support group, as caregivers really struggle, divorce care, grief share, grief counseling, just lots of ways to come together to have discussions, as well as workshops when we pull out for special times to just talk about mental wellness and mental health. So those are just some ways. I think as clergy spouses, in addition, we carry a lot of what our members deal with.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's why among pastors' wives, the incidence and depression is just high, because we are not just carrying our stuff, but because we are up close and personal and in community with people that are part of our congregation, there's a heaviness there. So it's important for us to be aware of that individually as well.
Okay, well, I do think, Erica, that you have to jump at this point, so we want to thank you. And if you have some final words.
Our church does too. Our church is only 5 years old, but I can tell you what our church does too.
Oh, absolutely, share. I would love to hear, because you ladies are in different cities, so I think it is a good resource. And then if you could kind of each say how people who aren't in your communities can find resources in their community with their churches, because a lot of people are more comfortable speaking with the clergy, or joining a church group for inclusion, so they don't feel so alone during this time. So
yes. So we have a ministry called Cali Cares. We also have our prayer team, and a lot of counselors and a lot of people who were in the field when they came to the church, and just kind of availed themselves. We're in California, so we've got a lot of young people, aiming at, careers in entertainment, which is very, very up and down. And unfortunately, a lot of times in Black families, I won't say in the church, but in Black families, they would kind of deem, oh, that's just my crazy uncle, or that's, my crazy aunt. And sometimes people literally are chemically imbalanced, and addressing it takes courage. It takes information. And so at our church, we try to make sure that we just make the resources available. Some people are really shy and reserved because we have a lot of imports, people who are new to California, like they don't live here. So they feel like, I don't know you well enough to tell you my truth. But then there are those that have extended themselves. And like you were saying, you do end up carrying it, and you end up emotional and heavy. So as a first lady, it's a delicate balance of caring but not carrying, offering services to help people, but holding them accountable to do the work themselves. You know what I mean? There's been so many situations where, your phone rings in the middle. I'm new, but I'm old school. So my phone rings in the middle of the night, or I get a text, and, some of my other first lady friends was like, don't give people your number. And I didn't grow up in a church like that. I grew up where they were there for us. When the hard times happened, someone was there to walk with you. And we have lots of amazing people who have volunteered, who are very qualified to walk with people through the difficulty. Even our youth ministry, that sometimes they don't have church. Sometimes it's a conversation, and sometimes it's really digging in to see where they are. And some have been honest about their mental struggles and how they feel. And I feel really good that that church can also be that place, where they can get help.
Okay, well, on that note, you mentioned the children. What do you see as resources to begin to change the way children are dealing with mental health? I know the Congresswoman spoke about child suicide, and that's major now. And for a child to even contemplate that, like, where are you getting that? Is it media? Is it what is going on with our youth, and how can we reach out to them and let them know that, because there's a lot of cyberbullying. The guys are more cruel. You have the mean girl cliques. How can we work with our children on dealing, because you all are mothers, how can we work with the children on dealing with mental health issues?
You have to be a nosy mama.
Yeah.
I'm a nosy mama. I'm a nosy auntie. I'm a nosy godmom. I check phones. I pay attention to facial expressions. Even Sunday, we went to church, and I saw that something was wrong with my daughter. And I kept asking her, Chris, are you okay? Chris, are you okay? And she was like, oh, I'm fine. I'm fine. Well, 2 days later, she said, something was going on with her friends, and she was excluded. And I'm aware of what's going on. We can't be so busy, and we can't be so consumed that we're not paying attention to if they're not talking at all, if it's just quiet, if they're in their phone, if the door's closed too much. I don't believe in, it's my house, so you can't say I'm gonna go to my room and slam my door. I'm not that kind of person. So like I said, I'm nosy and I push, and I believe that's the way my mom allowed us to be, you know, kind of safe, and we're able to walk through certain challenging things. So I try to do the same, reaching out as much as I can, managing social media time, managing how much they can be online, asking them who they're following, and really, you know, explaining certain things. So there's certain things I tell my kids that my mother didn't let me listen to secular music when I was a kid. And some people are like, oh, you're so cheated. I was like, well, gospel music was so amazing, I didn't care. But she told me later, she said, there were subjects that you didn't understand. There were words in there that I didn't want planted in your heart, that you hear somewhere else and awaken something in you that shouldn't be awakened yet. The conversation of sexuality and identity in this country is off the chain. And if we are not teaching identity, if we are not teaching them who they are, they're finding it out from online. Oh, I'm supposed to look like that. Oh, I'm supposed to have that. You know, if we are not managing what they see and what they experience, then the world is doing a better job at teaching our kids than we are. And so it's, you know, if you're a mama and if you're a parent, it's just a part of the job. You've got to dig in. You've got to find out what they're watching. You've got to put the restrictions on their phones and computers, even when they're mad about it. Be mad at me. It's okay in your life.
Yeah. Social media is huge. And when it comes to that, I think that being able to listen, my daughter's, one in particular, I got her permission to be able to share, struggles with depression. And we're able to talk about it openly. And I was able to get a counselor and a therapist for her to be able to sit down and have a conversation with someone about her anxiety, about her panic attacks, about the depression that she's dealing with, and for us to be able to talk about it. But for that getting nosy and getting in their business piece is important. And I think when they say nothing is wrong, I say, don't tell me nothing is wrong. Just saying, I just don't want to talk about it right now, because obviously something is wrong. So when she says something wrong, I say, well, I just don't want to talk. I was like, okay, not right now, but when you're ready, we'll revisit this, because I think we have to pay attention to the little signs. And if we're too busy, we miss them.
Absolutely. It's so true. I just had an incident with my daughter. She's only 10. And she was saying she came home and was upset because she couldn't look at TikTok. All her friends at school are, you know, they're on TikTok, mommy, and I can't. But, you know, we have, as we tried to explain to her, like, you know, but that's not our home. This is our home. And these are the reasons why. And so you're right. The social media pressure is real. And, you know, we just have to find the tools to address it, and address it in a way that in which they can understand. Particularly, I didn't think I would be dealing with stuff like this at 10. You know, I thought I had a little bit more time, but you don't, because we don't know what they're learning at school when they're away from and so we just have to be diligent, and we have to be, I'm even more watchful now during COVID than I was before COVID, because they're dealing with issues not being able to engage with their friends, and not, you know, we do what we call a PIES check, your physical, intellectual, emotional, spiritual, and social check. Like, so how are you feeling in all those areas? And we're just, you know, having conversations. My aunt shared that with me, and I was like, you know what, I'm never going to forget it, because I have to do it as well. It's like, where am I?
Let's do that one more time.
It's called a PIES check: physical check, intellectual, emotional, spiritual, and social.
Love it.
Just check all those areas. How are you feeling today? You know, how are you dealing with work? How are you dealing with your relationships? And I do that. I'll do it once a week. Like, okay, where are we today? Because COVID, you know, just dealing with all the stresses that are upon us and things that we have to bear right now. You know, I take it upon myself to make sure that I'm in a good place.
Yeah,
absolutely. So I'm going to now bring on some more panelists. We have joining us Molly Ryan, Karen Howard, and Dr. Terry Timberlake. Hi, ladies.
Hello.
Erica, you still good? Or you gotta...
Hi, everyone. A lot of familiar faces.
Erica, are you still good with us? Do you want to hang out a little longer?
You know, I've got to do Bible study because my husband's at the studio, so I actually did it about to make sure that my message is all right.
You gotta step out respectfully with the finger.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having this conversation. It's so necessary, and I'm honored to be a part of it.
We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Good night.
Bye.
So joining us now, welcome, ladies.
Thank you.
We have Let me get my papers together, sorry. Molly Ryan is the head of government affairs and advocacy for OTSCA Pharmaceuticals.
Good evening.
And I got it right?
Yes, you did. Good evening.
Then we have Karen Howard, advocacy manager for Mental Health America. And Dr. Terry Timberlake is the state director of adult mental health for the Georgia Department of Behavioral Health and Developmental Disabilities. Welcome, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.
And Ms. Molly, we're going to start with a question about OTSCA, because OTSCA has been a global thought leader in mental health treatment. Tell us a little bit about what OTSCA is doing in space of raising awareness on the importance of effectively treating and improving care for people living with mental illness.
Thank you so much. First, I would like to thank the Black Women's Health Imperative for this convening, and Linda, your exemplary leadership, and that of your team, Tammy Boyd and others. At OTSCA, our belief in as an organization has always been putting your effort, your energy, and resources where our mouth is, and investing in programs and public policies that sometimes have nothing to do with our bottom line. At OTSCA, we believe that no one deserves to be marginalized by mental illness or society's beliefs and attitudes. We are a family-owned Japanese company and respect the value with every mind, whether it's a grand idea that changes the world or just a simple human connection that changes someone's life or something in between. And just last week, we announced that as part of the collaboration with the Healthy Brains Global Initiative, a launch to mobilize, listen for it, $10 billion for brain health research, led by Victor Zhao, who is the president of the U.S. National Academy of Medicine, and Garen Staglin, who is the founder and co-chair of the mental health nonprofit organization called One Mind. This initiative has been endorsed by the World Health Organization, UNICEF, the World Bank, and the World Economic Forum. We're so excited and delighted to partner with the Healthy Brains Global Initiative. And I'm seeing one of our collaborators that's also as part of this roundtable today, Mental Health America. So look forward to this conversation because it is very, very timely.
That is amazing. And we are looking forward to those great innovations and advancements in mental health treatment. So then we will go on to speak with, I do apologize, ladies. Ms. Karen Howard from Mental Health America. How is this partnership beneficial with OTSCA?
So OTSCA really is, so thank you for the question and thank you for allowing me to be here on this stage with such wonderful experienced health policy wonks. I have been at Mental Health America for about 3 years, and we've worked with OTSCA to not only do federal advocacy, but also state advocacy. And we have a regional policy council that allows us to honor state mental health champions that are kind of nominated by our affiliates. Mental Health America has over 200 affiliates and associates in 41 states. So if anyone is having any difficulties, we ask you to certainly reach out to our local affiliates to get some help or connected to services. And we are able to kind of do the work connecting people to our affiliates and informing legislators about some of the changes that can be made statutorily through the support of OTSCA.
Okay, so with the pivotal election coming up, and I hope everyone's early voting if you're watching this video, what are some of the key legislation that you want to see this next go round? What is important, most important that our federal and state representatives need to pay attention to? What are the key issues?
Sure. So thank you for the question. Mental Health America knows we've been around since 1909, and we know that historically mental health services have been underfunded, even though there was a community-based Mental Health Services Act passed in the 60s that was never fully funded. So for us, a lot of our advocacy and time spent talking to legislators recently has been asking for more funding. Traditionally, during times of economic downturn, we see state budgets start cutting health funds, in particular mental health accounts. And so we know that though MHA's screening data shows that there's been a 400% increase in the number of people experiencing mental health symptoms and signs, even suicidality, thoughts of self-harm or suicide. And though those numbers are increasing and people are reaching out for help, states are now strapped and have started to cut their budgets. And so we're asking federal appropriators to add money to SAMHSA's budget, add money to the Provider Relief Fund through the CARES Act or any COVID supplemental legislation that will come through, and to make sure that that funding goes to states and localities to provide support and community-based services to people who need them.
Okay, and then Dr. Timberlake, as the State Director of Adult Mental Health for Georgia, can you tell me about the COVID-19 emotional support line and other services and resources offered by the Georgia Department of Behavioral Health and Developmental Disabilities?
Absolutely. Thank you for the question, and thank you for allowing us to have this relevant conversation. The Georgia COVID-19 Emotional Support Line is an initiative that we began earlier this year in April, and it was implemented in response to what we saw as a growing need for an opportunity for the citizens of Georgia with behavioral health needs to have a warm line. It doesn't replace the Georgia Crisis and Access line that we've operated for years, but the emotional support line provides statewide access, free and confidential, to individuals in Georgia who are struggling with any of the impact of COVID-19. We know that people are lonely, and we know that because of the social isolation and the physical distancing, individuals are struggling and wanting to connect. And so you can call the Georgia COVID Emotional Support Line and talk with a licensed mental health clinician, be able to receive some support, and be able to have a listening ear, and be able to receive some connection to the resources that you need. And so we found that it is an incredible additional tool amongst the various services and programs that we operate. As I said, we do operate a Georgia Crisis and Access line. And so for persons who are looking to connect to behavioral health services, that is the appropriate pathway into services in Georgia. We operate across the state. We have providers who are doing wonderful things to blend both telehealth as well as some in-person services as a result of this pandemic. And so the full array of outpatient services, both intensive types of services for persons who need more than just more than individual or family therapy, but actually the kinds of intensive services that come to an individual with a clinician, with nursing services. We also offer a full array of peer support types of services. One of the programs that has been incredibly impactful and that has also been a result of a very powerful collaboration with other state agencies is a forensic peer program that has blended our behavioral health as well as our criminal justice system, providing persons who have lived experiences in recovery as well as experiences with the criminal justice system, providing them with training on how to use those experiences to help returning citizens who are coming out of the criminal justice system and who have behavioral health needs to transition back into the community and live successfully. And as you know, this is an incredibly important population that we want to support. So our state mental health authority has been able to develop this partnership and to support the effective transition of hundreds of returning citizens who have behavioral health needs. So those are just a couple of our services. I could talk for a very long time.
I love it.
A lot of time.
2020 has been difficult for us all in very different ways. And, it's impacted us differently. If it was the racial injustice we were dealing with, if it was our president and his campaign ads, and if it was just being stuck in the house with someone you don't care about. And we know domestic violence has gone up during this time, and a lot of people are struggling with financial issues. How do we start that conversation? How do we, I know you've all touched on noticing symptoms and signs in your friends and family members, but how do we really pull out and embrace people when you see them kind of withdrawn, you see changes in them, and just to let them know what resources are available? Like, how do we get that up mainstream? How do we get the information out to demographic that it may not, they don't see billboards, they don't watch TV, they don't have the resources? What can we do as a community of African Americans to, get the word out?
Briefly say that community leaders such as First Lady Shauna Watley and Dr. Alexander are, how one way that we can touch the African American community in particular. And community leaders are oftentimes women. However, many times they're men, and both men and women who are comfortable talking about mental health, or who are comfortable referring, can always use resources such as MHA's website. SAMHSA has a crisis line, the suicide prevention hotline. We can also connect people through services via text, there's a crisis text line, 741-741, as well as one of the things that our kind of training teaches is just to listen and be there and support a person in the moment. And that is true for not only another person, but if you feel like yourself is going through a really difficult time, if you take a moment to just kind of take inventory and breathe and experience what you're happening, so that you can either write it down or get your thoughts together and share with someone. Just that being there in the moment is really, really important, and sometimes the difference between life or death.
I would add to that. I think that it is important for us to have these kinds of conversations in our daily lives, whether it's at the hair salon, the nail salon, barbershop, wherever we are, and wherever we're able to have a conversation and weave into the conversation. How are you doing? How are you feeling? How are you managing your stress? Encouraging our friends and family members to have those same conversations with their friends and family members. We start with our circle and then we expand it outwards, and helping our community to be able to have the conversation about how we are feeling emotionally just as easily as you might have the conversation about whether you've gone to see the doctor about your heart disease or your blood pressure or your diabetes or whatever the medical issue is. It's so much easier to discuss, seemingly, but being able to incorporate the conversations about mental health and physical health into our daily conversations and removing the stigma, so that people are able to understand that it is okay not to be okay, and to ask for help, and to realize that it's a sign of strength and not a sign of weakness.
I would agree too. I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, it's important for us to share our stories as well. It's important for us to let others know that if you've dealt with depression, that you had these issues and had this illness, and you've moved forward in it. I struggled with depression in my early to mid 20s. And I share my story because I want other young women to know that it's okay. It's not, there's nothing wrong with you, and that you need to just get it addressed and you can have a healthy life. But if we don't share our stories, if they don't see women like myself, other successful women, or women who are managing their lives in a healthy way, then they don't feel comfortable with acknowledging what's going on with them. And so that's why I'm so committed to young women, because I know the challenges that they face. And we just have to be willing to have the courageous conversation to share that, I've been there and got through it, and you can too.
And we talk a lot, but we are all women, and the Black Women's Health Initiative imperative. But we also have the Black men who are the least likely, just historically to seek mental health help. How can we reach our Black men? There are resources for them, just like there are for women, but they are the least likely to say, I'm struggling, I'm having this issue, I don't want to get up, I'm not, I don't enjoy my job, I don't enjoy. How can we get them involved in conversations? Because a lot of us are married to people who may be depressed or, don't want to go on or just have struggles and aren't able to verbalize it.
It's those conversations that occur in church, that occur in fraternity meetings, that occur in, again, barbershops, those kinds of opportunities for the everyday interface and the opportunity to have a conversation and to normalize the discussion around how you are feeling, how you're managing, how you're handling things. And while we know that often men are not as verbally expressive about their feelings, but are able to relate to a conversation about the difficulty being a Black man in America, being able to talk about, the fact that we are struggling with, a situation of racial and social injustice that has come to light in ways that it hasn't before. So being able to, again, create just some opening for that kind of conversation in a setting where people feel comfortable, people feel safe and supported by friends and family, and then leading on to the opportunity for them to consider, what have you thought about seeing a professional to talk about, this, that, or the other. Being able to remind, the men in our lives, the men in our family and friends that there are opportunities, for support, and there are opportunities that are there to help.
I think the most important thing for engaging men is peer support. Peer support means there's a person with lived experience who is in recovery, who shares their experience with the other person that is just learning about a mental health crisis or mental health illness, mental health condition, and then provide some guidance and some insight on how they can start making plans or making goals that lead them to the direction of recovery. And I think peer support is especially important in the Black community, whether it's men or women, because of the historical injustices that have that really set the foundation for Western medicine at all, period. There's certainly reason for mistrust of medical professionals and the medical system. And though we are perhaps hundreds of years removed from some of the initial abuses, there are experimentation and other recent history that certainly gives people pause before they approach their primary care doctor or someone that they would go to regularly for a physical exam or heart disease to talk about maybe a mental health issue as well. So I think opening the door to talk to each other, starting with people that are in recovery, is really important. And there are new platforms for doing that too. There's therapy for Black men. For women, there's dark beauty. There's therapy for Black girls. There are these kind of emerging applications and platforms where people can get, confidential, anonymous support from others of their similar backgrounds.
And then I would agree with that, and also add, I think, normalizing the conversation and meeting people where they are. Are they at a barbershop? Are they in church? Are they at their workplace, right? Is making sure that we're really meeting people where they are and making sure those services and programs are there for them when they need them. And again, really normalizing the conversation really goes a long way, because really you're then now starting to get to the root of the issue, which is removing stigma. And that's what stops people from going to seek services or treatment is that stigma, because they don't know how their peers are going to think about them. They don't know how their family members are going to view them, because they are going to speak to somebody about depression or mood disorder. And really normalizing that and meeting people where they are just some of the foundations in stamping out stigma.
Yeah, I would agree with you, Molly, as well. And also, so when I was diagnosed with depression, I was in graduate school at Johns Hopkins. I had access to some of the top medical doctors in the world. And when I finally went to see the doctor, he was like, well, let's put you on some medication to help you kind of get through this, to help you move forward faster. And because, you know, I grew up in the church, I'm like, I'm not going on medication. Like there's no way. And not to say that, you know, people in the church told me not to go on medication, but I felt like, oh, you know what, God is going to get me through this. You know, I can pray. Like I came to see you because, you know, I was encouraged to go to the doctor. But I took that prescription and I tore it up. And I cannot stress enough, like that's not the right thing to do. Like if the doctor is telling you you should take some medication or go on medication, you know, just for a short period of time, then you need to do that. And that's why it's important when we have folks like Molly and Karen and Dr. I'm sorry, I'm missing your name here. But for you all to, you know, to be able to say, you know, medication, you know, taking medication and really taking advantage of all the resources and tools that are out there to help you. It's so important. You know, don't be like me. Don't tear up the prescription.
You know what? That's a great segue.
No, I'm laughing, but it's true.
Not to interrupt you, sorry. That's a great segue to go to our question and answers session, because that's one of the major questions that I see in the comments. And the first one is for Molly and maybe Dr. Timberlake. How have drugs advanced to address mental health concerns?
I think that drugs have advanced. Obviously, we know that there are multiple, you know, first and second generations of antipsychotics. There are antidepressants and anxiolytics that have advanced to the point of having much fewer side effects. Some of the older generations, some of the older, earlier medications we knew that were frequently used would bring about, you know, side effects that would cause people to not want to be medication compliant. You know, who wants to remain on a medication if you're going to experience weight gain, or if you're going to experience, you know, a decrease in your sexual functioning, things like that. So I think that medication has become much more targeted and focused much more on the specific brain chemicals, the specific neurotransmitters that are related to mood, whether it's serotonin or dopamine or norepinephrine. Much more focused and evolved to a point where the side effects are much less impactful.
And I couldn't agree more with Dr. Timberlake. I think one of the fundamental principles, and I know Karen knows this really well about Otska, and this has continued to be our North Star, is that we honestly don't believe that everything can be solved with medicine for those with a lived experience. Every person's journey is unique, and we must create those wraparound support for those that are struggling with mental health, and to understand how better to serve those living with mental illness. What we did was we actually went into the belly of the beast and invested heavily financially as a company, as a family-owned company in Miami-Dade County. And you probably are wondering, why did we go there? Because Miami has 3 times the prevalence rate of serious mental illness than anywhere else in the United States. And we learned a lot as part of that project and journey. We learned that our systems, our healthcare systems, they don't talk to each other. We learned that care coordination really sits at the heart of care continuum. And then 2 years later, we received approval for the first in the world combination product that has technology embedded in it that helps us better understand each patient's journey. And then in 2018, similar to the way we're gathering here today, we hosted a roundtable with Congresswoman Bonnie Watson-Coleman in DC, and we hosted another one in Baltimore that was put together by Cocoa Bee Productions and went to the heart of Baltimore to understand how application of data is helping our community receive services and treatments. And after this roundtable, our former R&D president, Dr. William Carson, who is a psychiatrist, was so blown away by these young Black entrepreneurs. And we traveled with them to Google in 2019 to help them better understand how to bridge that gap of data and how that can be applied to Baltimore and the communities that they were serving. Because we did this because we know solving for wellness will take all of us to do.
Okay, and then for First Lady Shauna and First Lady Kim, tell us again the name of your organization, and they want to know why is your I'm sorry, guys, and I have on my glasses. Why is your organization involved in such a critical issue in the Black community? It's WILD. Tell us again about WILD.
WILD is Women Investing in Leadership Development, and Lady Shauna and I were having a discussion, and the thought of women, initially we started with clergy spouses, just that there are so many opportunities for us to go to conferences, but not to really have the pull off the mask and be real with each other and talk about what's really going on. I think that pastors' wives can be some of the loneliest women because you feel isolated and you feel like you're living in this bubble. And so being able to create WILD, we created a retreat called Rejuvenate. And we found that there were other women in leadership who were in higher levels of leadership, whether they led in the workplace and in the business world, who also were dealing with this feeling of kind of being isolated and not having a place where they could talk about what they were struggling with. So we decided to have Rejuvenate, which was a treat to address those issues and to provide a place for us to connect, to begin to partner with the Black Women's Health Imperative, which was absolutely awesome, to come in and talk about issues impacting African-American women. And this is important to us just because as women, we carry so much. We think we can do all these things, and we can, but it's important for us to take care of ourselves. Often we've got the water hose and we're watering everybody else, and we turn around and the ground we're standing on is dry. We've got to learn how to turn the water hose straight down, make ourselves so well watered that we're able to, everything else is able to be watered as a result.
Yes, Dr. Kim has covered it.
Okay. Yeah, I was like, Shauna, did you want to add anything, First Lady Shauna? Okay. So in light of COVID-19, and like I spoke about a second ago, all that's going on with 2020 is very heavy. How should we be approaching mental health? Starting the conversation, is it different now? Is it the same conversation? How do we tweak that conversation for what's going on currently?
I think this pandemic has placed such a spotlight on the need for daily self-care and daily wellness. We know that when we are able to take care of our minds and our bodies together, we are able to fight illness. We're able to be much more healthy overall. We cannot have this conversation about a response to COVID and only focus on physical health. So the response must be a conversation of mental health and physical health, and the daily kinds of practices that allow us to be healthy. Not only, maintaining healthy nutrition so that we're feeding our bodies in a way that we're able to be healthy and fight disease, but ensuring that we're getting enough rest so that our brains are able to function and maintain the appropriate mood functioning, and we are able to exercise so that we're able to produce the kinds of brain chemicals that we know impact our mood, and being able to practice daily mindfulness, paying attention to some of the negative thoughts, and being aware of how that impacts our mood. So these are the kinds of things that we have to pay attention to on a daily basis. We have to self-guard our emotional wellness. And certainly this pandemic has brought that to the forefront in ways that it has not been in a while.
And along with the impact of mental illness and mental health issues during the pandemic, we've also seen a spike in substance abuse, primarily alcohol abuse. So how are we dealing with that while we're treating the mental health, and then we have the substance abuse on top of it? How are those intertwined, and and how do we treat the whole person? Like you said, we do the physical, we do the mental, and then we have this substance abuse. So how do we deal with the trifecta?
So we don't look at mental health and substance abuse separately. We look at behavioral health, the two together. So a co-occurring mental health and addictive disease need is supported with dual integrated treatment. That's the approach. Treatment and services have to be integrated to address both of the needs. We wouldn't want to look at just someone's mood disorders separately from their alcohol abuse. And so being able to have providers and practitioners who can talk to both, who can assess for both, who can provide treatment and support services for both is an absolute necessity.
It's very clear that substance use has increased. In fact, residential treatment facilities are overflowing with people begging for help. There's been, certainly as you mentioned earlier, October is Violence Against Women Awareness Month, or Domestic Violence Awareness Month. So there's been certainly a spike in calls as people are spending more time at home and may have additional stressors such as job loss or family losses or things like that. So I definitely think that though there are resources out there, people are having to figure out how to operate in the best way that they know how right now. And we just encourage people to use to stay away from those numbing agents as much as they can, so that if you're not already experiencing a substance use disorder or addiction, that you don't develop one over this time, and that instead you find some of those healthy ways to cope, as we've said, like setting time aside for sleep, setting aside a time for prayer and meditation, or other ways of kind of centering yourself, setting limits on the amount of and types of foods that are ingested, and making sure that there's time in the day for exercise or physical care. So, a combination of all of that, in addition to having the support from your family or friends and peers, all kind of leads into your mental health or state of mental illness. And MHA knows that you can have a mental illness but still be in a state of mental health. We all have mental health. And that these depression, anxiety, psychosis, eating disorders, they usually occur on a spectrum or cyclically. So we're never the same. We're always changing. And over time, we might see ups and downs, and just be okay with that.
And along those lines, there was a question from a clinical or personal experience. Can you tell the audience the difference between being blue or just kind of down, and then being actually clinically depressed or needing mental health help? There's a fine line. Like, where do we?
You want to think about your functioning and whether or not the symptoms that you're experiencing are causing an impairment in your functioning. If you have, for at least 2 weeks, experienced, and we look at, a cluster of symptoms. Depression doesn't always look like someone sad and crying, and it does not always look like someone being sort of down and blue. It can look like someone being very angry, or having an explosive, sort of impulsive temper. Or it can look like someone being sad as well and tearful. It could look like someone sleeping a lot or not sleeping enough, or someone eating more than usual or not having an appetite. So there's a range of symptoms that impact sleeping and eating and weight gain, sometimes concentration, not being able to focus enough, having feelings of despair and hopelessness, and sometimes some suicidal ideation. Not all of those things, but the important thing to remember is for at least 2 weeks, you've had at least 3 of those symptoms, and they've impaired your ability to function the way that you normally would function, the way that you want to be able to function.
Okay, ladies. Well, this has been great, and I think we have reached our time limit. So in closing, if you guys want to add anything, feel free to.
There was one question that I wanted to answer about barriers to treatment. And so if I can just end by saying that when you do recognize that you might have had a change in mood or behavior or cognitive function, and you're ready to reach out and ask for help, it's not always an easy thing to do. There are lots of barriers that get in the way, whether it's the ability to have broadband during this time, to get telehealth services, whether it's being able to have the time to research and date to find a therapist or professional psychiatrist, and whether it's finding someone that you actually connect to that that is aware of their implicit bias that everyone has, and that can help you move through things in a way that that honors your background and experiences. So I will say, be tenacious in looking for services online or through networks that you have. And Washington, D.C. area is really blessed and fortunate to have kind of a whole plethora of resources here, but in rural areas or areas where people aren't so open to talking about their mental health, I do just encourage anyone and everyone to keep trying, keep looking, and definitely reach out to national organizations or local organizations to get help, because there is help out there.
And I would like to just chime in there. Couldn't agree more with Karen at Mental Health America, and would like to end on the brain continues to be our last frontier in organs, in understanding how the body truly works, powered by the brain. We've been able to do kidney transplants, liver transplants, heart transplants, but the brain continues to be a very, very elusive organ. As I mentioned in my opening, the partnership and collaboration that we have with Healthy Brains Global Initiative, hopefully that will get us in the right direction in trying to understand the brain. We are very proud as OTSCA to partner with this organization to determine how to pull through some of those learnings, which will not happen tomorrow, everybody. It will not happen tomorrow. And we have to always remind ourselves, I think Shauna said it, we have that friend, we have that parent, sibling, loved one with a lived experience. And through this and even other partnerships, these conversations that are happening, we can always shine a light on these issues and create those breakthroughs to stop this problem. We will continue to dedicate ourselves to empowering our community, and we will defy limitations so that anybody that is affected by mental illness can just push past their limitations and earn their full potential. Thank you so much for having me.
I just want to say self-care. Make yourself a priority. Make your self-care a priority. That's it.
And I would just like to say thank you to Black Women's Health Imperative and to Linda and Tammy for having us all here today, to bring us together for this courageous conversation. And it's just amazing to see Black women coming together to push forward and support our community. So I just want to say thank you again to Black Women's Health Imperative.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much to
thank you, ladies.
Our panel, to everyone that's been here. This has been a great opportunity, and I hope that there is an increased awareness and our ability to speak up about what we personally struggle with, so that other people will be comfortable sharing.
Okay, well, thank you, and take very good care of yourselves.
All right.
Thank you, Monica.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye, Molly. Bye, Karen.